一、人们眼中的伟大科学家爱因斯坦，不仅因为相对论改变了人类对时空的理解，更因为他在科学之外提出了很多哲学性、信仰性的思考。上帝不掷骰子，他既是科学巨匠，也是思想者。达尔文以进化论震动了整个19世纪的思想界，他的伟大不仅在科学上，更在于挑战了既有的宗教和世界观，引发文明整体的思想转折。奥本海默作为原子弹之父，他的科学成就与道德困境紧密交织。人们记住他的不仅是曼哈顿计划的成功，还有他之后引用伯加梵歌说出的那句“我成了死亡，世界的毁灭者”。特斯拉，天才发明家，直流与交流之争中的异类。虽然生前孤独潦倒，但人们记住的是他面向未来的创造力和近乎超凡的直觉。三、科技文明与信仰的关系。依西方例子，牛顿、开普勒、法拉第等人都将科学探索视为理解上帝创造的秩序。科学在西方文明的诞生，本身与基督教关于理性之神的观念密切相关，这让他们在追求科学时带着某种终极意义感。三、现代冲突与融合。20世纪后，科学的力量变得巨大，既能造福电力、互联网，也能毁灭核武器、生物武器。信仰就成为一种必要的制衡，科学告诉人类能做什么，信仰提醒人类该不该做。加精神自由加文明信仰的结合上，只重学术制度而缺乏精神土壤，会培养出很多技术专家，但难以孕育思想巨人。爱因斯坦之所以伟大，不仅仅是相对论，而是他把科学、哲学、宗教都联系在一起思考。
In many ways, this went back all the way to the early 1920s and Einstein's first arrival in New York City. His theory of relativity had just been confirmed by other scientists, changing our fundamental understanding of the universe, while Einstein was the recipient of the Nobel Prize. The New York Times had run a story in December 1919 proclaiming that Einstein had, quote, destroyed space and time through his research findings. Here was the most fundamental overhaul of human thought since Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection a half a century earlier. But Einstein's work was greeted with applause, whereas Darwin's had been viewed as sacrilegious. His associations with figures like Charlie Chaplin in Hollywood and his increasingly iconic physical appearance all made him a more identifiable figure in the years that followed. Most tellingly, by the 1940s, it was becoming apparent how Einstein's revolutionary ideas were changing society and the world in practical ways, not just from the perspective of theoretical physics. As all of this occurred, he became a figure as fated within American society as Stephen Hawking later would be in the second half of the 20th century, or figures like James Lovelock and Richard Dawkins in the early 21st century. By the time his working life came to an end, Einstein's written and published output was enormous. Though it may seem unusual to many, Einstein's primary academic output was in the shape of papers in academic journals, of which there were nearly 300 over a span of 55 years, rather than books. This was and remains the primary means of communicating research for academics working in the hard sciences. Such books as Einstein authored, of which there were over a dozen, were generally reproductions of work he had already published as academic papers, the idea being to tie together his existing work on general relativity and other topics, or to try to make the material more accessible to a general audience. Some of these were used as advanced undergraduate and postgraduate textbooks for students of theoretical physics for years to come in universities. Additionally, translations were made into multiple languages, ensuring that Einstein's work was accessible in dozens of countries by the middle of the 20th century. Beyond this academic output, Einstein was a voracious correspondent, and at the Albert Einstein Archives at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, there are over 3,500 pages of his private correspondence dating from 1912 to 1955. He also wrote widely on various political, philosophical, religious, and humanitarian issues. Unsurprisingly, collected editions of Einstein's work, correspondence, and other writings such as those published since the late 1980s by the academic press of Princeton University, the university where Albert spent nearly all of his career in the United States, have stretched into dozens of lengthy volumes. The individual who produced this enormous body of work was, despite his brilliance and celebrity, a resoundingly modest individual. He once proclaimed of himself, quote, "I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious." He never acquired the trappings of wealth or fame, and indeed visitors to his home in Berlin in the 1920s or America in the post-1933 period were generally struck by the modesty of the abode, where the most lavish adornment was usually a piano so that Einstein could play the classical music he loved. His family life, it must be admitted, was difficult. His two biological sons went to live with their mother after she and Albert separated in 1914, and thereafter their relationship was somewhat distant. Hans later immigrated to the United States in 1938, where they reconnected. But Eduard remained in Europe and, despite maintaining a correspondence with his father, never saw him again after Albert left for America in the early 1930s.